Been looking for a house with no walls or no whispers, no hiding places, no secret sister. Been looking for a house that won't shelter a lie, no tear-stained past or reason to cry. I wanna live in a house of...
This is Empowering Women Everywhere. I'm your host, Nan Gill, and today our guest is Nancy Schneider. She is an attorney with her office in Washingtonville, New York. She studied at the University of Rhode Island, and she got her master's at New Paltz, SUNY New Paltz, and she went to Pace Law School for her Juris Doctorate. She has a general practice and specializes in real estate, adverse possession, boundary line disputes, and title issues, foreclosures, matrimonial and family law, wills and estates. She is a member of the 18B panel for family court. She serves as a court-appointed referee for foreclosure sales, and she's certified as a community dispute and parent-child mediator. She's the past president of the Board of Orange County Mediation Project. She's one of the founding board members of the Children's Rights Society, and she's qualified as a divorce mediator and collaborative law group member. Nancy, so wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
She works with first home buyers,
Yes,
first-time home buyers, and she's been in the real estate business for 35 years.
Yeah.
So she has a lot of experience. And welcome, Nancy.
Thanks. It's great to be here, and everything you said is true. So, at least present, Pat.
There's more that's
There's
true
more,
that I left
there's
out.
more there, yeah.
But so, if someone's thinking about purchasing their first home,
Yes.
what advice would you give them?
Before they even start, I think they need to shop for a person that they can relate to as an attorney. Price is not as important by any means as the personality or the people that you'll be working with, as somebody that'll have a lot of questions.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's important. And actually, your realtor is important, because the realtors have to be on top of things and
Right.
have to be able to advise you correctly and work with the attorney so that they know what's going on.
So you need a good rapport.
You need a team.
You need a team.
Yeah.
So you have to establish your team.
Establish your team and
Right.
shop around. Don't be afraid just because you visit with one or make a phone call to somebody that you have to use them.
Right.
It isn't the case.
You can actually go in for a free consultation.
A lot of times, I think that it's important for the attorney to sit down and just get to know their client and schmooze a little bit in the beginning. Talk about the contracts, talk about what is included in the house. In other words, discuss everything that they know at this point about the house that they're looking to buy. Whether there's a shed, whether there's a pool, whether they've heard any rumors about the house, and so on.
Right.
Yeah.
There's also something that I found, as I've been in the title business for 35
Right.
years, and one thing that I think is very important is that you review the title policy of the seller.
Well, if you're if you're the buyer,
Right.
you're the first-time homeowner. It's your attorney that tries to get any kind of information from the seller's attorney
Right.
that they can give you, old surveys, title, and so on, and if they have them, certificates of occupancy and so on, because the title company has to review all of that stuff and do their own search.
Right. And then if you look at the covenants and restrictions on a piece of property, you can tell whether or not what you have in your heart's desire to do with your property, whether or not you can do it with your property or not.
Right. By covenants and restrictions, it would be, there could be all kinds of things. There could be In certain areas, you're not allowed to dig a new well, to have a new well. In other areas, there's a shared driveway. Or other areas, you're restricted from having more outbuildings and so on.
Right. I remember I met one gentleman who, in his heart's desire, was to have 5 acres of land and put a barn on there so he could put his horse on there. And he ended up buying the piece of property and putting up a barn and putting in his horse, only to find out that there was a restriction on the deed that said there could be no agricultural animals on the property.
Well, yes, that's a deed restriction,
Right.
but doesn't somebody have to enforce that deed restriction?
Right.
I mean, usually the town is not going to do that if it's on your deed. If
Well,
the
it
town
was a
itself,
subdivision, so he had problems with his neighbors. He had to go around with all his neighbors and get them all to consent
consent to the horse.
to having a horse there.
Yeah,
So-
I've heard about somebody in New Jersey who had one of those little pigs, the Vietnamese
Oh,
pig,
yeah,
and
the
had
little
trouble.
tiny ones.
Yeah, and he had trouble with that. So
Yeah.
you do have to be careful what the zoning
You have
is.
to check
and
that.
What the, yeah, but you can't do that as a first-time home buyer. You can't just do that before you buy the house. That's up to, that happens. I guess if you wanted specifically to build a barn, you should check to see if that would
Yeah,
be
well,
allowed
basically,
ahead of time,
by
yeah.
reviewing the seller's title policy,
Right.
you can see if there's any covenants and restrictions in there beforehand.
Yes.
And getting a
Yeah.
survey and
Yeah.
looking at the survey to make sure that,
Right.
you know.
But as the first-time home buyer, your attorney would be the one that tells you that and asks
Exactly.
you what you have planned for that piece of property.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've had people buy 5 acres, and the wife or the husband have never walked it. They don't even know what's there. And then there are others that it's extremely important.
Right.
Every tree stand and everything is there. So it just depends on the
And it's very interesting
communication.
because there's all kinds of markers and everything on the property. Like
Right.
it might be to a blazed oak tree and then along a stone wall.
Right, in the description, yeah. Yeah, from where Jed used to tie his horse. If you some of the old ones, and then chains and rods.
Yep.
You know, the old descriptions
The
would
old
be in chains and
description.
rods. So it's interesting to go back and read a lot of that stuff if you're going to get it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you can check on the deed chain
Yeah.
to see who owned your house before.
Yeah,
And, you know, maybe
Yeah.
what it was used for before.
yeah. I often give, as a seller's attorney, I often give my copy of the title report to the buyers, the new buyers.
Right.
And then because they don't get a copy from their attorney usually. And I often just give the one that we get. Just first of all, my file is then lighter, and I won't need it later.
No,
Yeah,
you don't.
So
Yeah. So in the title report, they have a listing of all of the deeds that affect the property. If there's a easement that goes across
Right.
it, and
a shared well and
shared driveway,
shared driveway.
a right of way. There could
Yeah.
be your
All kinds
neighbor
of
could
things.
have a right of way over your property. So
Right.
you want to know all that
Yeah.
before you purchase or before you decide on a property.
Well, if you can get a chance to do that, most people don't get that until you don't even order the title until the contracts are signed and they're on their way to getting their mortgage.
Right.
So-
That's why I'm encouraging now when real estate brokers list a property that they get a copy of the survey and a copy of the old title
Right.
report. The report has all of the copies of the deeds and the easements in it.
Yes. Yeah.
And
If they
then
can get the
as
old
a
title
buyer, before you, I know sometimes it gets a little crazy.
Well,
If
sometimes.
it's a buyer's market, you know,
Yeah.
everybody wants to buy it before they even know where the property
Yeah, but
lines
sometimes
are.
people have owned the property for a number of years and the attorney is dead or they don't know who the attorney is, I don't remember, and they never had that information.
They
So
never
it's
had
not
the title
always-
report.
Yeah, yeah, it would be up to the broker to find who that attorney is if they look it up.
Right.
But I don't know if anybody keeps stuff for more than 7 years anymore.
Well, we track stuff down.
Yeah.
We do. And if you're thinking about, if it's a sizable investment, you can do a title search before you put
Yeah.
your money down. You can order your title, and there are, like we do, we call it title to go. We actually do title reports where we can check to see what's on a piece of property before a buyer orders,
That's
signs on the
interesting.
dot.
Yeah, that's
So
interesting.
you can do title to go, and that way you're sure about what's in your chain and what you're actually buying before you even put down a down payment.
So I see. Okay, so what you would then you would recommend that the title is ordered as soon as possible, if not even before. But
Yeah.
that would be what the brokers would be doing, because the lawyer doesn't even know who this client is at that point.
Right. Well, if you go and you're looking to buy a piece of property and the broker doesn't have the old title report, you can actually go online and order a title to go
Yeah.
and get everything for like $2.25
Mm-hmm.
before you invest thousands of dollars into the property to make sure that you
There are
know
no
exactly
surprises,
what's
yeah.
on the property. And then your report is all ready to go when you're ready to buy.
Would you recommend that for a large piece of property or for any size property?
I would say if you're looking for a condo, to buy a condo, you want to check the condo docs and all that. You wouldn't need a full search. But but you'd want to know what kind of rules and regulations are in the condo.
Mhm.
So a lot of times the broker will
Bylaws,
have a
the
copy
rules and
of
regs, yeah.
the offering plan
Right.
and the declaration, the condominium declaration, so that you can review that ahead of time, and I suggest that.
Yeah.
But if it's a large piece of property and you're looking to subdivide, or you're looking to have a farm, or you're looking to,
Just enjoy a large piece of property for
yes,
privacy's sake.
then I would suggest that they order a title to go, so that they have complete knowledge of the property before they go to, before they put their down payment
And
down.
who would be recommending that?
I always
The broker?
recommend
Yes,
that.
but you don't meet these people until
Yeah,
Until
so the
after-
real estate broker. So
Yeah.
I'm working with real estate brokers now, encouraging them to
Mm-hmm.
do that. But homeowners can ask for that.
if they know to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
which is
you're-
one of the reasons why we're having a show.
Right, and you're asking me
on
about
this.
first-time home buyers, so we have to have educated first-time home buyers to know enough to
Exactly.
do that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I guess there may be a pamphlet that the brokers could hand them out. Say these are things that you could do before.
Right. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
We'll have to work on that, Nan. Very cool, very cool. So basically what you're saying is put together a good team.
Yes.
You want to have an attorney that you feel comfortable with.
And we'll
An attorney that gets back to you.
and we'll spend time with you, or
Right.
at least the staff will spend time with you, a knowledgeable staff. I mean, there are many attorneys whose staff aren't allowed to answer one question.
Right.
They always have to get back to you. But then there are others who have staff that's been around for a long time and at least can answer the basic questions like what's happening with the file or going on.
Right.
But then there are others that can give you good advice, from their own personal knowledge.
Exactly.
Not legal advice, but
And people that, respond to you if you have a question.
yeah.
Or
and
that
and
that
call
will
you-
work with your real estate
Yeah.
person. I mean,
Yeah.
you really have to have a team.
Right. Our office always calls back. We
Yeah.
make a major effort to call back. Yeah.
When people are going through buying a home is the single most important investment that most Americans make in their entire life.
Right, most do, yeah.
Yeah, and if you have an attorney that's not getting back to you, or a real estate broker that's not answering your questions or your needs, or you're working with a bank that, you're just another number, that's
Right.
not a good situation.
Or
you want to
meet-
make sure
right.
you're comfortable
You don't want to
with
have to
your
meet your
team.
attorney at the closing.
No.
Sometimes it happens just out of circumstance, but that's not the norm. That shouldn't be the norm.
So any crazy things that you remember from your past experience getting involved with title that have happened to you?
Oh, well, I certainly remember with you, probably one of our first titles together, when my client was selling a house and they had built a pool when they owned it. And my client was going through the paperwork, and she saw the satisfaction for the loan for the pool,
Right.
and said, "Oh, I'm not going to need this," and she threw it away. And then when the title came, there was a second mortgage on
Right.
the house, and
And it was for the pool,
it was for the pool,
and she threw
and
away
it
the
wasn't
satisfaction.
satisfied, and she had thrown away the satisfaction, and we had to put money in escrow, if I recall. And we had to bring an action in court.
To get it
Yep.
off the record.
Yep, to get it
Yeah.
off the record, because
So
everybody,
don't throw away those
everybody
papers.
had gone out of business.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do
Yeah.
remember that.
Well, what about that second mortgage you just
I do remember that one.
That was satisfied.
Which brings me to another idea,
Well,
which is if a seller is going to sell their home,
yeah.
it's good for them to get a title report from the date that they purchased, so they can see if there's any mortgages that haven't been satisfied even before they list their house.
Right.
It's also good on the municipal searches. Now, there is something every municipality charges to give you a copy of the CO, to give you a violation search and a street report. But if you, as a private citizen, go, you can do what's called FOIL.
Yeah.
It's a Freedom of Information Act, under the Freedom of Information Act, where you can request to see your file, to see if there's any open building permits, and you can look there for free.
Yeah.
So I suggest that any sellers, they should run a last owner search to make sure all the mortgages or the refinances that they've done while they've owned the property, they're all properly satisfied, and go and FOIL the municipality to make sure that all their COs and everything is in order.
This is to prevent a last minute.
Right, because if you
run
do it when you list
Yeah.
your home and you get all your everything in order before you go to list your home, when you have a buyer, you're not going to be sitting there running around trying to figure out how to get this mortgage satisfied.
Or how to even get the CO for the wood stove that you put in
Exactly.
and didn't get a permit for.
Exactly.
Or got a permit for it and didn't close the permit.
And basically, if you go and work with the building inspector before there's a problem,
They're
they're
very
much
good.
more gracious.
Yeah.
If you're
They
trying
are.
to sell your house and they're mad at you because you haven't, gotten the CO for your wood stove that you put in 10 years ago, then
But-
they're going to give you
yeah,
a little bit of
especially
a
if you've got a
difficult
per-
problem.
Especially if you got a permit. Originally, if you got a permit, they'll pester you sometimes
Yeah.
to get the CFO because they want you to close it within a year or you have to pay an extra fee.
Exactly.
And otherwise, if you didn't get the CFO, then you've got to go through the whole inspection, make sure it's up to code. And it would have to be up to code, what code is now, not what code is
When you
Yeah.
originally did it. So it's a good idea to go
Yeah,
down and
you don't wanna
check
get stuck.
anyway.
I don't want to get stuck in any of that.
So I'm remembering back about some challenges, and one challenge came for me
What was
when I bought my house on Lakes Road.
Oh, yeah, I remember that house.
You remember that
Yeah.
house? So at any rate, this was before I was even in the title business. I was buying a house on Lakes Road, and I went to close on the house, and everything was fine. And then later on, I found out that I didn't have half my dock. So basically what had happened is, and this you have to be very careful on.
That was across the street.
It was across
Yeah,
the
it was
street.
a
I had half the dock across
was a
the
separate
street, but
lot,
not the
wasn't
whole.
it?
It was a
Yeah.
separate lot. What happens a lot of times is people will buy a piece of property, and they'll have a survey or, old survey. They get a hold of an old survey, and they read in the old survey, right? Well, after the people had bought the house originally, they may have gotten another piece of property nearby.
Right.
And it was adjoining, and it was added to it, so they really own both deeds.
It was two separate deeds.
Two separate deeds,
Yeah.
they bought at two different times, but they are contiguous. So what happens is, when they go to convey, sometimes they only pick up the one deed and
Right.
only convey the one parcel, and the other parcel is left in the ozone layer.
Yeah.
So, luckily for me, the attorney for the seller had their client execute a couple of deeds, just in case he had a problem. So I was able to get that other lot back.
He had him execute a couple of deeds.
Yeah, he actually had it in his
Oh, great.
file.
Yeah.
Was
Just in case.
Just in case. Yeah. So
Well, he
as a
was
seller's
thorough.
attorney, he was smart.
Yeah, he was thorough.
He was
That's
an
good.
old timer.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
very beautiful guy.
The old timers were a lot of fun to work with.
I just had one recently where they bought a piece of property, and they went later and bought a 30 by 50 foot piece
Right.
that actually was, the property was shaped like that.
The flag.
Yeah. And then they bought this other piece to add on to it. Well, they went and they refinanced, and when the bank refinanced, they only used the one deed, so it was missing that 30 by 50 foot piece in the mortgage. They got foreclosed on. They never mortgaged that 30 by 50 foot piece, so they still are actually entitled to that piece. And the other people who bought from the foreclosure have title to the other piece. So you really need to be careful.
Yeah. 30 by 50, that wouldn't really be enough to put a house on.
No,
Yeah.
but it was, I think they needed it because of the way the driveway went.
Uh-huh.
A lot of people are buying houses now without surveys, and I don't recommend that.
I always try to recommend that, and people say, "Oh, the last people had a survey," and I have to remind them that just because the last people had a survey, that doesn't mean there weren't changes since then, and the survey isn't. The surveyor's insurance doesn't cover the new people.
No.
It covered the old people.
But you can, if you have an old survey, you can get that survey recertified
Yes.
to you, which is less
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah.
Also, if you go back to the old surveyor, if they do an update, it's less expensive than if
Yeah.
you get
Yeah.
another surveyor
Yeah.
to do the whole survey over again.
Basically, we all have to live to be a couple hundred years old so that we can keep following up with these transactions that have been going on, so we can go back to the old records.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I keep all my files.
Yeah, I always know where to go.
So
That's great. Yeah,
anyway.
we've started getting rid of old files, and now we've modified it so that we try to keep the real estate longer, at least the title of research and the deed, and the deed and the survey. So we try to keep all those things.
which goes to another thing that I want to tell everyone that buys a house. When you get your title policy, that's one of the most important
Yeah.
things that you have.
Don't lose it.
That and your survey.
Yeah.
Do not lose them. Put
Yeah.
them in a safe deposit
People,
box.
so many people have no idea where they are.
Yeah.
And other times, another thing that's hard to get, which you mentioned earlier, is the prospectus and the bylaws and the amendments
Exactly.
for a condominium. It's amazing how many people, it's $200-something to get a copy of those.
Well,
It's hard to get.
it's very expensive, but you can. They're online. So there is a way
A lot
that
of
you
them are
can
online.
order
Yeah.
them online.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the older ones. I'm working now with a property up in Sullivan County, and we need a copy of the bylaws for the association,
Right.
and it's an association, so everyone in their deed has to follow the rules and regulations of the association.
Mm.
And the girl now that owns the property, she's thinking possibly of doing, a weekly rental, because it's right next to where they put in that new casino.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be a perfect location to rent out weekly, but we have to review the bylaws in order to see whether or not we're in our rights to be able to rent out on a weekly basis.
Hmm.
So now I have to order a copy of those bylaws, and it's going to cost.
Yeah.
It's going to cost because it's going to be a lot of pages. Some of the clerks were charging 25 cents a copy, which isn't too bad. Now Orange County just upped it to 50 cents a copy.
Yeah.
So that's expensive.
Yeah.
So keep your paperwork.
Right. Right. And also, people that are buying on a shoestring have to really have a little bit of extra money set aside so that they can there are unexpected things that happen. No matter how thoroughly you try to be there, they may have to put out a little extra money.
Right.
And another thing you mentioned about first-time home buyers, you have to review what this thing is going to cost, and you often don't have any idea what the bank is going to have for their
Right.
proceeds and so on. But explaining the adjustments for taxes and so on is
Exactly.
very important, because they don't realize that the bank is going to ask for a whole year's taxes in advance plus 3 months for escrow.
Exactly.
And they need to know that.
Well, that's why you need a good attorney.
That's why. That's the only reason.
So
No,
ask around, and
Yeah.
Nancy's
Sure.
right in Washingtonville. You can give her a call. What's your number there, Nance?
845-496-0355.
Right. And I'm right here in Goshen, so if you want to do a title to go,
Right.
you can give me a call at 845-294-7500.
I'll have to say that your company, as you run it, is one of the most thorough, conscientious
Thank you.
companies that I've ever worked with.
Well, we care.
Yes, you do.
We really do, and so do you. And that's what the important thing is. Find an attorney that doesn't just have a big office and that has, a lot of staff that they have to pay for. Find an attorney that really cares about you and what you're doing and wants the best for you and will go over everything with you. Is there anything else that you want to say?
I'm just thinking of the challenges that we've had between us and trying to get a closing taken care of. I mean, if you can think of it, it's happened. And between the title company.
Oh,
and
yeah.
yeah.
Well, you have to work, the attorney has to work closely with the title company that's responsive.
Right.
Because different title companies, they say, oh, that's a problem.
We have one right now where we looked at the old deeds, and we saw that there were. It went from brother to sister to mother and father, and there were a number of convolutions. And we found out that this one person wasn't on the last deed, and she had been deeded 50% of the property. And
So you're missing 50%.
We're the buyer's attorney, and we were looking at 50%, because two brothers owned 50% each. No, one brother owned 50%, and it looked like this other brother had bought it with either his wife or his sister, or and there was no mention of this woman. And the lawyer just said, let the title company figure it out. I said, I would rather not do that.
No.
So we did find out that it was the wife, and she had passed. But the lawyer didn't know that. We had to do our own. We had to do our own research, and that wasn't really our job at that point.
Exactly.
It was the other fellow should have told us what was going on, but he was too busy. Oh,
See, the way
he didn't do. That's another thing. Find a lawyer who does a lot of real estate.
Right.
Otherwise, they don't know the questions.
Right. And they don't know the answers.
You can't help it. You can't help it until you've done it a while. Right. You know that you have to have the experience, and there's always something new that comes up.
Yeah. You have to have somebody that's really on top of it.
Yeah. And a good staff helps too.
Yeah. Now, the way that they've worked it now is if you have a title report and there's a question, a lot of the issues that are in the back can be covered by just giving the policy, which is another reason why it's so important for you to keep your title policy, because it can take care of heirship issues.
Sure, because you can go back to the previous title company, and if they've insured it, it's up to them to provide the proofs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Nan.
Thank you.
I've been looking for a house with no walls or no whispers, no hiding places, no secret sister. Been looking for a house that won't shelter a lie, no tear-stained past or reason to cry. I wanna live, live, live in a house of love. I wanna live, live, live in a house of love.
She introduces me to a guy named Seth Riggs, who trained Stevie Wonder, Janet Jackson, Michael Jackson. He, trained me in a technique that to this day is, serves me incredibly well. A real master actor is a behavioral scientist.
Right.
We study human behavior. That's what my life has been about, studying human behavior. Work that I do, all the parts that I play, all of the writing that I do is all geared towards transformational entertainment. that that actually deals with issues in the world in a way that entertains people.